Greetings and welcome back to another episode of the Daily Run, and today we're playing as Isaac. Unfortunately, we have yet another Curse of Darkness on our starting floor, which is a bit unfortunate, but nevertheless, at least we can appreciate the lightning effects that are going on, like I was explaining yesterday. It wasn't too big of a problem here. I did get hit 2 times, I think, just because the animals were dark, and of course one of them had to be a spider. My constant menace, I just can't deal with spiders for no reason at all. I don't know why the problem is, but for some reason I just can't predict their unnatural random movement, which I guess is the point, but at the same time I really feel like I shouldn't be getting hit so much with them, especially since I've played the game for so long at this point. Nevertheless, this run was definitely on the weaker side. There were a few interesting decisions that I had to make, and I do feel like runs that only go to mom usually involve a lot of interesting decisions that you otherwise wouldn't really make, just because you are trying to find ways to go forward and to kind of go deeper and go further than your initial objective, just to get really a lot of points. And in this one, I think I went a bit overboard, and not really overboard in the sense that I got a lot of points, or maybe that my run was good, but I definitely feel like I maybe misconstrued some intents that I had, and let me explain what I'm trying to say. So the first thing we did is on the first floor, when I was fighting Dangle, which I believe is the name of the corny poop boss, which he has a ton of HP and he's a very annoying fight in general. He has very predictable movements, he's like Dingle, but still he's like a more annoying version of Dingle, just because he does spawn corn poops and they're kind of hard to deal with. They bounce around in random directions, and especially his charge, his slippery thingy, the creep that he lives on the ground. It's just an annoying fight to kind of go against, and I decided to drop a bomb on it just to make it go a little bit faster and to kind of minimize my chances against taking damage from him, because in those fights usually what doesn't get you is the toughness of the enemy, just that you kind of get tired of dodging in the same ways over and over again, and eventually you lose your cool, you use your patience, and that's when they get you and essentially get hit for no reason at all. I decided to use the bomb there, and that kind of cost me in my item room. So when I went to the item room, I couldn't use my bomb to get the item that was in there, because it was one of those item rooms that contained the stones and the spike on the other side. I felt like picking up Magneto, which was the item in the item room, wasn't worth taking the damage, because while sure it will give me some consumables, taking 1 full heart of damage I think is like 300, maybe 400 point deficit, and I'm not really sure if Magneto would give me like 300, 400 points, so I'm not sure if that is like an EV plus or maybe EV positive item to take in that situation. I'm definitely interested to kind of, as we go through the dailies, to kind of keep track of how many consumables I would have gotten, but since this run was so consumable, it was lacking a lot of consumables, I do feel like I should have kind of saved my bomb to use it on the item room and then get that item to kind of warrant me, so I could go to the shop, so I can find the secret rooms and second secret rooms and things like that. Just because this is the run that goes to only mom, I feel like having exploration, a high exploration bonus in the sense of going to the secret rooms and the shops and things like that, is very important, just because you really don't want to maximize your chances of finding those really good items that will allow you to go forward and just kind of break the game in some other way or another, just to kind of give you the edge over the other players. Sadly, that didn't happen just because I didn't pick up Magneto, and thankfully at least we had flight, so I'm guessing that we didn't really miss out on too many consumables I could have picked up, because anything that Magneto would have gotten me, I can just kind of fly over and get it manually. There were a few, besides that, there were also a few interesting decisions I made along the way, and we found the Callus Trinket. And the Callus Trinket is a trinket that kind of, when you hold it, you can't take damage when you walk over spikes. And usually that's a very good thing indeed, just because I think the majority of damage that you take in Isaac is just from negligence. You kind of forget where things are, maybe you move a bit too fast, you kind of get ahead of yourself, you walk over the spikes or you walk over the red poop, and that's what damages you. So having a trinket that kind of circumvents your stupidity in some sense, or maybe just, like I said, negligence, is a good thing, and usually I wouldn't harp on it, but in this particular instance is something that you really don't want to be holding, and the reason for that is I like to take pills. I think pills are great because they do give you a lot of possibilities. You can get a Bolts of Steel, which is obviously great, some Spirit Hearts, maybe you can get a stat upgrade. Sure, there are some bad pills, but overall, you know, I'm saying that on average I feel like a pill effect is positive, so that's the reason why I take them. But outside of those pills, there's a new pill in Afterbirth Plus, which I've touched in the past, and I'm probably sure you're aware of it, and that is when you use it, you consume your trinket and add it as a permanent effect. And you might be saying, well, that's great, because then you have the Callus effect permanently, and you can pick yet another trinket up that kind of maybe is a bit more situational. Sadly, in this case, what Callus does, because it does block the damage from spikes, it also blocks damage from spikes which are in the sacrifice room. Of course, that's something that you really don't want to happen, because on a run that goes to Mom, you usually want to use those sacrifice rooms to kind of sacrifice yourself, and so you can go to the dark room and then get a ton of points that way for the stage bonus. And that's why I decided to drop it, just because I already had flight, which means I am immune to spikes in some degree. I really didn't want to hold it and just accidentally pick up a pill that would then consume the trinket, and if there was an opportunity kind of risen to me in the later floors to use the sacrifice room, because I would have consumed it previously due to, like I said, mainly being a bit unlucky for getting that pill, I didn't really want to kind of pay the due on that, so decided to drop it and just kind of forget it and maybe find a new trinket later. Thankfully, I did find a new trinket, and the Ace of Spades I think is one of the best trinkets in the game if you're kind of going for score and just trying to get a lot of points, because it does allow you to get a lot of really good cards. I think it increases the chance of getting any of the red colored tarot cards, but I'm not really sure at this point, just because there's so many different cards. I do have the memory of the Ace of Spades being a good trinket. In this particular daily, it didn't really turn out that great, but still, I definitely feel like it's a better choice as opposed to Cal, just because there's a chance of us consuming it accidentally than not being able to use the sacrifice room. Besides that, we're already at the depths 2 floor, and you can see that the run does go on. And there were, again, a few interesting decisions I had to make. So we had Mama Mega in the shop, and something that I wasn't aware of before I actually did this run is that if you use Mama Mega on a run with Boss Rush, as soon as you go to Mom, Boss Rush will open. And I should have done that, definitely, because that would have effectively allowed me to do Boss Rush, even though I was really, really late for it. Because I didn't know it, I kind of missed out on like 4,000 points in total, which is a bit unfortunate. And again, this is just due to me really not beating the base game yet, meaning I really don't know what a lot of the items do. I'm kind of learning them as we go through, and kind of from what I read on the Reddit threads or maybe what I see in other videos. So that's definitely a good thing to know in the future. But still, I decided to use the Mama Mega on the dark room floor when I actually go through it with a sacrifice room, and that kind of worked out well for me. Of course, again, if I did have the choice, it would have been much better to use it on the floor with Mom, just because it would have effectively allowed us to explore the whole floor and do Boss Rush at the same time, and then I think we could have held our own in the dark room without it. As it was incredibly helpful and definitely kind of killed some rooms outright. The difficult rooms, however, it doesn't really have a big effect on, so I would say that Mama Mega in the dark room doesn't have a huge effect on how many times you're gonna get hit, just because if there's a hard room in there, Mama Mega is not gonna clear it with just one use or just one explosion as soon as you enter it, and you're still you will still be stuck with like 2 adverse terrarius or maybe 2 deaths, which will eventually get you, just because they are the types of enemies which have a bit of unfair patterns if there's multiple amounts of them in one particular room. Another thing was that I had a Tame, and I decided to use the Ivy Bag, and my game plan there was that if I use the Ivy Bag, I get the Tame effect, and then I can use that to kind of kill the enemies and have some chance of getting black hearts. And the more black hearts I have on the ground, that means the more chances I have to actually get to the dark room. In general, you need 12 hearts to go to the sacrifice room, from the sacrifice room to the dark room, and if you're a bit unlucky, it can take more. It just depends, from which dropouts you get by actually playing the sacrifice room. It depends on just how many hearts you have already on the floor. In this case, I decided to use a Tame in a few situations. I think I got 2 black hearts in total, and that allowed me to go to the sacrifice room with a much more secure health pool, just because I did decide to go to the Dark Judas, and that was also the reason why I decided not to use Mama Mega on that particular floor, because if I did use Mama Mega, that means as soon as I enter the room, every enemy would die, and then I wouldn't be able to use the 8 Thames passive effect with the Ivy Bag to kind of get more hearts to go along with that. As it turned out, I'm not really too dissatisfied, just because using Mama Mega is always a great fun, and having Ivy Bag combined with a Tame is one of the combinations that kind of rewards good playing, good positioning, but overall I would still say that this run was actually pretty good. One surprising notice here was that my item penalty was extremely low, 144. I think that has to be one of the lower item penalties that I've had on a daily run. The rest, of course, the damage penalty is naturally high, just because I did take a lot of damage on a sacrifice room, but besides that, I feel like I've played this run pretty well. Of course, another thing was that our consumable bonus is slow, our swag bonus. I didn't really find a lot of consumables this run, which is a bit unfortunate, but the rest seemed solid. I felt like I played well. I felt like the whole daily did come to a very nice conclusion at the end, and we did finish in like the top 150, which is probably like top 100 if you take out the cheaters. If you're asking yourself kind of why am I adjusting these ranks differently, so sometimes I'm like 70th and I say top 50, so I'm kind of interrupting 20th, many people, and sometimes I'm like in the 170th place and I say top 100, and the reason is that I just play these dailies in different time slots of the day. So of course when I play later in the evening, that means that there are more scores out there, which also means that there are more cheaters, so my ballpark kind of moves as I go through the day. So the later in the day it is, I kind of shave off more people, assuming that more of them are cheating just because a higher mass of people is actually playing the daily. With that said, I hope you enjoyed this one, guys, and I hope to see you next time.